when order replaced freedom without resistance. Nothing was taken by force, and no one was ordered to surrender anything. Rules changed quietly, procedures tightened, and life continued as normal. Freedom faded without a single confrontation. This story matters today because loss does not always arrive through oppression or violence. Sometimes it arrives through comfort, predictability, and the promise of order. The most effective transfers of power are those that the population welcomes, because consent eliminates the need for coercion, and the absence of coercion eliminates the perception of threat. When freedom is exchanged for order voluntarily, the exchange is rarely recognized as loss until capacity for reversal has been exhausted. At the time, the country faced rising complexity, uncertainty, and public fatigue from constant debate and instability. People wanted solutions, not arguments, and leaders promised clarity in place of chaos. The fatigue was genuine and deep. Years of political contestation had produced exhaustion without resolution. The public's desire for order was not a failure of character. It was a rational response to a system that had delivered conflict without progress. New measures were introduced as efficiency, designed to streamline decision-making and reduce friction. They were framed as practical, temporary, and necessary for a smoother society. The framing was calibrated to avoid triggering the resistance that more dramatic changes would have provoked. By presenting each measure as a technical improvement rather than a political transformation, leaders ensured that the cumulative effect of the changes went unrecognized until it was substantial. Most citizens accepted the changes because nothing dramatic seemed to disappear. Choices narrowed slowly, oversight softened quietly, and responsibility shifted upward without alarm. The gradual pace of change was essential to its success. Rapid change produces awareness. Gradual change produces adaptation. By the time citizens might have noticed the cumulative effect, they had already adapted their expectations and behavior to the new conditions, making the change feel normal rather than imposed. Order delivered results. Processes accelerated, disputes declined, and outcomes felt more predictable. The tangible benefits of order were real and immediate. The costs of lost freedom were abstract and deferred. In any contest between concrete present benefits and abstract future costs, the present consistently wins. This asymmetry is not a failure of judgment. It is a feature of human cognition that those who seek to expand order at the expense of freedom consistently exploit. What went unnoticed was how participation was being replaced by compliance. Freedom was not removed, it was deprioritized. The distinction is important because deprioritization avoids a resistance that removal would trigger. Freedom remained formally available. The legal right to participate, to dissent, to choose, continued to exist on paper. But the practical capacity to exercise those rights was diminished through procedures that made participation time-consuming, ineffective, or irrelevant. The country did not lose liberty overnight. It traded it gradually for convenience, and that trade would define its future. As order became a priority, systems were redesigned to minimize debate rather than encourage involvement. Decision-making centralized, justified by speed and consistency, while local autonomy quietly diminished. The centralization followed a predictable logic. Centralized decisions are faster, more uniform, and easier to implement than decentralized ones. Each of these qualities is genuinely desirable from an administrative perspective. The cost, reduced responsiveness to local conditions, and reduced opportunities for citizen input is borne by a different set of values. Oversight mechanisms weakened as efficiency replaced accountability in public messaging. The language of governance shifted from accountability to performance. Officials were evaluated by the speed of their decisions and the consistency of their outcomes, not by the quality of their engagement with the public. This shift in evaluation criteria changed institutional behavior, rewarding compliance with central directives and discouraging the kind of responsive governance that accountability demands. Citizens adapted to the new structure, valuing predictability, while becoming less engaged in shaping outcomes. The adaptation was mutual. Citizens who found participation increasingly difficult or unrewarding gradually withdrew from the processes they had once valued. Their withdrawal reduced the pressure on institutions to remain responsive, which further reduced the value of participation, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of disengagement. Dissent did not disappear, but it lost influence, filtered through procedures at limited impact. The channels through which dissent could be expressed remained open, but the pathways through which dissent could influence outcomes were narrowed. Formal objections could be filed, public comments could be submitted, and votes could be cast. But the decisions that mattered had already been made through processes that preceded these formal opportunities for input. The absence of resistance was taken as approval, reinforcing the belief that order had improved governance. The interpretation of silence as consent is one of the most persistent features of authoritarian governance, whether soft or hard. The absence of objection is treated as evidence of satisfaction, even when the absence reflects the futility of objection rather than its unnecessary nature. What felt easier in daily life carried a hidden cost, reduced agency, and diminished voice. The system appeared stable, but participation was thinning. Order was no longer a means. It had become the goal. The conflict emerged when new pressures tested the system and revealed how little room remained for choice or correction. Problems that required local judgment were met with uniform rules, creating frustration rather than solutions. The rigidity that order demands is poorly suited to variety that reality presents. Uniform rules applied to diverse circumstances produced diverse injustices, and the centralized system lacked the local knowledge and the procedural flexibility to address them. Citizens felt protected but powerless, safe yet increasingly disconnected from decisions shaping their lives. The combination of safety and powerlessness is a defining experience of populations living under soft authoritarianism. The basic needs are met. The environment is predictable, but the capacity to shape one's own circumstances has been transferred to institutions that are responsive to directives rather than to the people they serve. When mistakes occurred, responsibility was difficult to assign because authority was concentrated while accountability was diffuse. The concentration of decision-making authority in centralized institutions created a paradox of accountability. The decisions were made by identifiable authorities, but the justifications for those decisions were embedded in systems, procedures, and metrics that no single authority controlled. The buildup intensified as social tension grew beneath surface order, fueled by the realization that stability had been purchased with silence. Attempt to push back faced procedural barriers rather than force, making resistance feel futile rather than dangerous. The procedural barriers were more effective than force would have been, because they demoralized rather than mobilized. Force creates martyrs and galvanizes opposition. Procedure creates frustration and produces resignation. What once seemed like efficient governance now felt distant and unresponsive. Order was holding, but freedom was no longer shaping it, and the gap between control and consent was widening. The climax arrived when it became impossible to ignore that order had replaced freedom not through coercion, but through consent shaped by fatigue and fear. What people accepted for comfort had quietly redefined the limits of choice. The resolution lies in understanding that order is meant to serve freedom, not substitute for it. When stability becomes the highest value, liberty is often the first casualty. This story matters today because societies still trade participation for predictability, believing control will protect them from uncertainty. History shows that systems built on order alone struggle to respond when conditions change. Freedom rarely disappears in dramatic moments. It fades when convenience becomes more important than voice. The question is not when freedom was taken. It is when we stopped insisting on it. When